Now, unlike Legine and Mike, we are unscripted.
We are. But we go well together.
We work well together, but this is not the Legine and Mike show. We're not that professional at this. So we're going to kick it off with a presentation that I've put together on the business of golf that hopefully is consistent with everything you've heard here today. Okay, first of all, who am I? I wonder. I'm going to start with my name badge. So I went downstairs. I had to be here at 9 o'clock. So I went downstairs to get my name badge, and I gave him my name, and it said, there's a note on your name badge. It said, he's not clearly affiliated with golf. I said, well, may be an error there, but I think I am. And thank God they let me come through. So I serve in a variety of capacities. For the past 15 years, I've been executive editor of the African American Golfers Digest, whom you know more as DeBert Cook. She has let me tag along with her for the past 15 years. I'm president of an economic development firm called NCS International for the past 38 years. That's what's been keeping the lights on. I'm president of Jim Beatty Golf Ventures for the past 5 years. And through that, I have been lucky enough to become the founder, with great support from the industry, of the African American Golf Expo and Forum. We now have had 2 forums, about 1,100 people, over $1 million impact in Atlanta, Charlotte. And this year, August 19 through 22, we'll be in Lexington. And on your tables are some gifts from Lexington, Kentucky. These, I said Lexington? I said Lexington, I meant Louisville. I'm just checking to see if y'all listen to me. But you do have some gifts from the Louisville, Kentucky Sports Commission. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge my good friends from Palm Beach County that are here. Had dinner with them last night. With those folks from Palm Beach County, just wave their hands. I'm being very general here. The Sports Commission, if you would stand. You're going to hear more from them later, but they're here for a particular reason. Oh, well, I said Jim Beatty Golf Ventures already. You know that. Here's what's on your table. Due to suggestions that I received from a number of sponsors, we have reduced the price of admission to the expo from $150 to $99. So thank you, all sponsors that participated in our evaluation session. All right, so my talk can probably be termed as hidden figures. Those that know me or know about me, I tend to use a lot of numbers for various reasons to try to make my point. I don't like to just talk in abstract. I like to talk in numbers as much as I can. Well, I drew a lot of inspiration from hidden figures, and that's why I've entitled my talk Hidden Figures. Golf has a tendency to measure everything. Here are measurements all time from Augusta National, from the Masters, cumulative statistics from 1942 to 2021 on a hole-by-hole basis. Now think about that. From 1942 until 2021, they have measured every stroke on every hole. Golf does know how to add, subtract. Golf keeps track. What's the point? Hang with me. Here it is. Now, look at this. Number 1 hole, number 10. Amen corner, 11, 12, 13. Look at that. Golf keeps tracks, 1942 to 2021. I studied these very closely. I'm going to make my point. Here are numbers from the golf industry. I did not make these up. I got these from the National Golf Foundation. So I want to make my point about the golf industry and people of color and opportunities in the golf industry. Total size of the industry, $84 billion. That's as of 2016. By my calculation, by my ciphering, with even a modest increase over the past few years, I think it's closer to 100 billion. But be that as it may, what's the African American share of the golf industry? Honest answer is, I don't know. I don't think anyone knows. It's not been measured, it's not been studied, but it needs to be. So the surveys you have is a step toward that, but we're going to have to get better at measuring what the African American impact on the golf economy is. You can use whatever you want to, but if it were just 1%, it'd be an $840 million impact. Total wage income, $55.6 billion. What's the African American share of that? Again, we don't know. I'm simply making some assumptions here. If it were 1%, it'd be $556 million. By my ciphering, if you use an average wage of $50,000 a year per person, that's some 10,000 plus jobs that would be in the golf industry. But we don't know. This is just my best guess. U.S. golf facilities, somewhere between 15 and 16,000 facilities in the United States. African American owned, less than 10. Less than 10. Total spent on golf, again, according to the National Golf Foundation, $5.6 billion. African American spend on golf, we don't know. Anecdotal data tells me it's significant. What your surveys will tell me will be something that we will quantify, and actually we will put it in the African American Golfers Digest. Now I know it's more than just black people in here, and that's fine, but we will simply put it as developed from the Diversity Roundtable. But we're going to put a number on it some way, somehow. Total numbers of golfers in America, 25 million. How many are African Americans? I don't know. I'm told, I've heard, 3 to 4%. That means 750 to 1 million. Is that a good number? I don't know, but that's the number I've heard. Now, if somebody in this room has it, please tell me, because no one knows at this point. But we do know from 1942 to 2021 what hole number 2 at Augusta National played. We can compile those stats, but we don't have stats on what matters to us. Golf industry jobs, 1.89 million. African Americans in those jobs, don't know. But if it were 1%, that'd be almost 19,000 jobs. Total U.S. firms in America, almost 6 million. African American firms with more than one employee, 140, almost 141,000. Many of which, I'll show you in the next slide, can participate, and Gina's going to talk about that in the golf industry. Employment at all firms in the United States, 129 million. Employment at African American firms, about 1.3 million, 1%. We represent, as African Americans, 13.6%, according to the U.S. Census, of the American population. Just think if we were 13.6% of the golf industry. Think what type of staggering numbers that would be. This is where we tend to be deployed in terms of the industries we're in. Healthcare and social assistance, vast majority of that. However, when it comes to opportunities for us in golf, look down the road, look down the chart here at accommodation and food services, retail sales. We can begin to make an impact. Some of us are. Gina's going to talk about how we need to take steps in order to do that. I wanted to share that with you. Manufacturing. We can do a lot. Okay, supplier diversity. Golf is doing some things. In my opinion, they're doing good things, could be doing better things. Now, this is just my opinion. I'm not here to indict anyone. I'm simply here to share the numbers as I understand them. So according to one company, here's what I found out. Supplier.io, they're a world leader in supplier diversity, developing supplier diversity programs around the world. Supplier diversity, one of their findings, according to a study they did this past year, or in 2022, 81% of respondents indicated alignment with corporate culture. Businesses believe supplier diversity benefits their organizations and their communities, and leadership interest is at an all-time high. Supplier diversity should not be seen as a forceful, unwelcome initiative. It actually makes companies better, and this kind of number statistic shows it as well as others. I just want to highlight that. The average spending with diverse suppliers, according to them, with companies they work with, 5.9%, 6%. The real good ones are at 15. Okay, the number, again, the spend on golf, $6 billion roughly. If we were at 6%, 15%, or the companies that are represented in the entire golf industry, if they were at 6% or 15%, what would that mean in terms of revenues as well as employment? Something to think about. So here's how I've tried to sum it up. I'm a mathematician. You'll have pardon this. So the summation from A to Z of the golf industry times passion times time, bracket, times the Jimmys and Joes, the Michaels and Moes, ad infinitum, minus the bullshit would equal equality. That's my man. Somebody said one more time. Now this is not going to pass any math test. But here's the summation from A to Z of the golf industry. Over time, T1 to infinity, right? Of the Jimmy, Joes, Michaels, and Moes. All of us in this room are these little bitty dots here. Okay? All of us in this room times all of us minus the BS equals equality. That's my version of playing through, okay? So let me sum up my part of this. Somewhere we must come to see that human progress never rolls on the wheels of inevitability. It comes through time and the persistent work of dedicated individuals. I like to think of myself as one of those, said by Martin Luther King. Thank you.
Well, you're not done. You're going to talk some more.
Gina, it's all yours, darling.
Thank you. All right, well, how about it for Jim Beatty? He always makes it real, brings it back to reality. And I think that everything that Jim said is such a good segue to what I'm going to share, which is progress and some data, as Jim mentioned, as well as some of the growth areas and the opportunities that still exist, and the opportunities that exist not only for diverse suppliers, but for us as an industry to continue to move forward. How many of you are new in this room that haven't been to this session in the past? Okay, how many of you are business owners? Great, okay. So I'm going to do a little bit of history then to bring everybody up to speed as to how we got to where we are today from the point that Steve Mona mentioned earlier, which was the diversity task force that was in place several years back, evolved into hosting a diverse supplier summit after a lot of work and a lot of kind of small projects. That all kind of culminated in having a diverse supplier summit where we had about 25 leaders from the golf industry in the room, spent an entire day talking about best management practices and the kinds of things that go into making a successful supplier inclusion or supplier diversity program. And when I say 25 golf leaders in the room, I'm talking about organizations like the USGA, like the PGA of America, like the PGA or LPGA. There's many organizations that were a part of that. And then as we moved into 2021 and the new Make Golf Your Thing procurement work group started to get more grease under its wheels and get going, that really propelled everything forward much more. With that, you have the USGA, the PGA of America, the PGA Tour, the LPGA, and the NGCOA, all a part of the procurement group, which is now under Make Golf Your Business that you heard Neera talk about earlier. So in 2021, that group launched a portal called vraconnect.org, where you can go and self-register your organization, and it's basically set up to self-certify. So you state, that you're a diverse supplier, state what your goods or your services are that you provide, and then decision makers within golf, procurement decision makers, can go and they can search and they can find you based on geography, based on the need, based on timing for an event. But it gives a way for the golf industry to connect with diverse suppliers. And so that really has put the tools in place to help us really continue to catapult forward in terms of getting contracts in place. So when we started out March of 2021, that was when the supplier portal and database was launched. From that point forward to today, we're now up over, as Neera mentioned, over 2,000 diverse suppliers registered, local and diverse suppliers. And when I say diverse suppliers, I'm talking about various levels of diversity, whether it's minority or owned organization, a veteran-owned business, a woman-owned business, an abled or disabled-owned or veteran-disabled-owned business. Or do I have a question? Yeah. Out of the 2,000, how much money has been spent amongst those 2,000 companies? Well, we don't track spend on a database because it's just like a database where you're looking for jobs. You're not tracking the job that's filled. You're just creating a database of information where somebody can go in and be found and connect. I think in the future you'll probably see some collective growth, like percentage growth data. As an industry, but I can share with you some of the categories I know have been filled, types of suppliers that are being contracted with, and I know that they exist. So I will share that with you in a couple minutes. So did I forget another? Oh, yes, gender diversity as well. So all of those identities or types or ethnicities or backgrounds are represented through VRA Connect. The other thing that we've done, so we've grown 77% since March of 2021. So that's tremendous growth in terms of getting people in the database, and then also growth as far as users of the database. We have conducted outreach over the last year to 500 diverse business organizations across the country. So organizations such as these partners, we're continuing to share opportunities with these partners, but they're partners such as the National Minority Supplier Development Council, the U.S. Black Chamber of Commerce, Black Chambers of Commerce, and NMSDC regional organizations. WeBank, which is Women's Business Enterprise National Council, and the regional organizations. Novoba, National Veterans Organization of Business Owners. We also work with Disability In. All of these organizations that are national in scope and also regional organizations, and all these little ones across the country to create outreach and awareness around opportunities for procurement within golf. So we have over 500 outreach partners that we've worked with. We've promoted 5 major golf events, championship events, and opportunities at those events. And the categories that Jim was showing on that slide, there's the concentration of businesses owned by African American business owners. We have some of those categories that are being purchased for the championship events. And the opportunities, the procurement opportunities aren't just championship events, but they're also individual, like it could be for national headquarters or regional headquarters or a section, a PGA section, a golf course. It could be all different levels of industry procurement, but the championship ones are a little bit easier to talk to insofar as there's a lot of categories that are purchased for them. And so to give you an example, some of the things that have been sourced include catering, transportation, staffing, food and beverage products, housing, florals, photography, portable restrooms, janitorial services, and printing. And I can tell you meetings are happening, RFPs are happening, and contracts are being awarded. We have seen successes, and you're going to see more of this coming out of that procurement work group this year. You're going to see more success sharing, so you can hear more about, for those business owners in the room, what your peers are achieving success around. But we've seen success in these areas: printing, security services, janitorial services, food and beverage products, employment services, corporate housing, transportation, and craftsman or construction services, which I know that was also a category on Jim's list that he showed. So all of those things have been procured. And so there's very positive momentum and commitment happening from the organizations that are part of the procurement work group. We also, just to kind of, again, give some history on what has been achieved since I was up here last year, the procurement work group did host a diverse supplier summit in Memphis in connection with the FedEx St. Jude playoff. And we had a panel talk to diverse suppliers who were invited from the local area to attend and answered questions. We got some news coverage to help spread the word. We had the Black Chamber of Commerce there, as well as the Minority Business Council there, and then proceeded to have some continuous dialogue with the Minority Business Council, who works in collaboration with the Minority Business Development Agency for federal certification of minority businesses. So, so we're working with them to help spread the word and try to continue to make those connections between procurement professionals within the golf industry and diverse-owned businesses. We also had an information session with the New York Women's Chamber of Commerce, about 70 attendees in that session. So that occurred as well. And then in addition to that, several of the associations have, almost all the ones in the procurement work group, have had education sessions internally for their purchasers to help them understand how to find diverse suppliers, to reinforce the importance of it, and to continue to help to drive it forward. That is kind of a nutshell of the last year. But what I would say is, as Jim knows, and Craig and Mike know from working with me back on the task force, I have a very high sense of urgency and really am focused on kind of like what do we need to do to make things happen and to get things done. And I will say I'm seeing a tremendous amount of commitment from everybody's part that is a part of this procurement work group, and they are hiring diverse suppliers into their supply chain, and they are focused on continuing to make change. So we want to see if anyone has any questions. One more thing Mike Cooper did ask me to mention is, I know, and I don't know if we have any folks in the room in this regard, but there is another track besides Jim's expo, which is a great opportunity to connect with buyers, and besides the VRA Connect tool and the portal, there are some folks potentially in the room here who are shining examples of more of a grassroots approach to generating business, particularly in the apparel industry, which I'm personally committed to try to figure out a good channel with the Merchandisers Association to connect folks who are with an apparel background or company to better navigate that side of the business. But if there's anyone in the room that has a business in that vein that would like to talk about their successes and how they've achieved success from a grassroots perspective, we'd love to hear that. Is there anybody here? Okay. All right. So, any questions?